Rosalyn, you've led and consulted with high-performing teams. What are some common traits of those teams?
For me, communication is like the number one thing, right? Whether it's personal or professional, I tell people that if you can have nothing else, being strong in communication is going to be your single most differentiator. It's not about good writing skills or good presenting skills, right? It's about being able to influence and being able to influence without authority. I talk about a lot, but also being able to build credibility and trust. I think being transparent is the number one thing. I'm actually really surprised by how many companies will hide their information, or marketing doesn't talk to sales, or sales isn't talking to post-sales, or RevOps is sort of sitting on its own island and not involved in the conversations. So I think when you see a high-performing team, having really good communication is going to make all the difference. And that starts from the top, right?
Yeah.
People, it's kind of cliche, oh, it needs to start from the top, but it really top through, all of the different layers, being able to have really good communication in terms of what are the goals, what are we trying to do with our business, and being able to understand what that strategy is to execute upon that. And so just, I think, reiterating, communicating is where I see those high-performing teams, because everybody knows what their role is, what the expectations are, as well as how what they do impacts the greater good, right?
Yeah. Are there any tactics you've seen be super successful when you're trying to accomplish that sort of tops-down cascading of information?
Over-communicate, right? And communicate it multiple ways. I'm a true believer in there's no too much communication. You'll probably, although my kids probably feel differently about that when they hear mom keep saying the same thing over and over again. So from a tactical perspective, it's literally being intentional about communicating and keeping everybody on the same page, which is, I guess it's easy to say that, and I think it sounds very like, oh yeah, that's common sense. It sounds very basic, but I think when we get involved in our day-to-day, especially as RevOps, I'm sure you've seen this when you're a RevOps leader, you're so busy, right? Just trying to get through the day-to-day that you have to kind of step back and remember, okay, who needs to know about this? Make sure that the communication happens and it's ongoing, it's regular, it's intentional, but also it's comprehensive enough so that people can understand, what does it mean for them?
Yep. You mentioned something else that was interesting around making sure people know what they're responsible for, what their role is. As RevOps, our role can kind of shift throughout the year.
Yeah.
Are there any strategies leaders can employ to make sure that their team knows what they're accountable for on a regular basis?
The goals can change, right? Your priorities will change and things will shift, but making sure that as they shift, you're communicating, right? And that means even if it's a Jira board, it's a Google Doc, right? You don't necessarily need to have something really fancy, but you need to have it. Right? And make sure that it's the communication that's regular, but also people actually reading it and understanding it, and then just keeping people informed. From a RevOps perspective, one of the things that I think is really important is to publish what you're working on.
Yeah.
Right? What are those goals? What does your RevOps roadmap look like? Right? What are those initiatives? So that at any point in time, anybody from your teams, not just your own RevOps team, but whether it's your go-to-market team or even your finance team, can go and see what is RevOps doing today to make sure that, hey, these are aligned with what's important to me, right?
Yeah.
What's important to our function. And I think that really helps with the conversation when priorities change, right? And all of a sudden now this is the number one priority, and then you can shift your roadmap accordingly.
It's an excellent point on not just communicating down, but communicating up, right? We did these deliverables. Does anyone know that we did them, right? That's a key point. I feel like that sometimes gets lost, where you can have a great internal culture of communication, but also kind of spreading that out to the rest of the org is so important.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that, because that's another thing that I'm constantly on my soapbox about, because I think as ops folks, we're natural enablers, right? We're folks that want to support others. We want to see other people be successful, right? I've heard so many times when ops oh, those are the folks that, they're the CRM police, or they manage the tech stack, right? Or they run reports,
right?
And they think of us, as sort of the order admin, right? Versus that strategic sort of partner. That's why I tell, coaching clients, folks that I work with, is making sure that everything you're doing, you're tying back to the go-to-market strategy, even if it's 3 layers away, right? But if you're changing a forecast process, if you're, even adding new fields in your technology or buying a new tech and integrating it, tying that back to how is this delivering on an outcome for the business is so important. I guess the other thing I would just say about that is that because we're not those ones who want to, be out in the spotlight, where we're kind of like, we want to be a little bit behind in the shadows, is the way I kind of push folks to do that is just, hey, in the spirit of driving alignment and good communication, you should be talking about what you're delivering so everyone can be on the same page.
Right. It's not bragging, it's actually informing.
Exactly.